This is the iPod Nano 6th generation, released in September 2010. It was quite the change from the previous generations of Nanos. It introduced a touchscreen display to the Nano line, making it the second iPod line to include this, the first being the iPod Touch 3 years prior. It was a pretty interesting device, especially when compared to the previous generations of iPod Nano, being the first one to ditch the iconic clickwheel. But it was met with positive reception and people were happy with the new design, although some did miss the video camera added on the previous gen, along with the loss of video playback. But all this was 14 years ago, so how does the iPod Nano hold up now? The Nano is centered around a 1.54 inch screen with the resolution of 240 by 240 and has 220 pixels per inch, which looks pretty good, especially for 2010. Surrounding this screen were the volume and power buttons on one side and the 30-pin charging port and headphone jack on the other. It came in 7 colours: silver, graphite, blue, green, orange, red and pink, which is what I have here. Back in the day, the Nano was praised for its display. For reference, the iPhone 4 had just been released with the Retina display and had a screen resolution of 326 pixels per inch, but that was a significantly larger device and was currently one of the only things with the Retina display. The iPod Touch 4 would bring this display to the iPod line only 9 days after this Nano's release, but if the Nano would have had the Retina display, it would have had a massive impact on this device's performance and battery life. It's not like it's the kind of device you're always staring at, so the Retina display would have been unnecessary. You can look at some photos on it, but its most common use would be with the screen off, listening to music and podcasts, which allows the Nano to hit the advertised 24 hours of music playback on a single charge, even though the battery is tiny, at about 105 mAh. It does last a good while. The battery in the Nano I have is definitely feeling its age, and doesn't last much more than 10 to 20 minutes with the screen on. But with the screen off, it still manages a good few hours of music and podcast playback, which is perfectly fine for what I use it for. When I use it, I'll charge it up once every 2 to 3 days and it'll last just fine. Since the Nano doesn't have much in the way of wireless communication, it can hold a charge for quite a while, so when you pause music and put it to sleep for a few hours, it'll be on about the same level of charge when you wake it up again, granted that the battery is still somewhat healthy. The iPod Nano 6th generation had another name back in the day, being known to some as the iWatch. This was because, for one thing, Apple wouldn't coin the term Apple Watch till 2015, but also because a lot of people realised it kinda looked like a watch. And with the clip on the back, it could be attached to other accessories, so with third-party watch bands being created, it was able to be used as a watch, and certainly was. I have one, and coming from personal experience, if you're buying a watch band, try and stay clear of the snap band ones. I used to have one of those and it lost its effectiveness over time and at one point caused the iPod Nano to fall off my wrist, but as long as you have a proper watch band it works great as a watch and there's lots of customization options available for watch faces within the software. About that software, under the hood this Nano runs what appears to be a stripped down version of iOS 3. It had some software updates over the years and now it looks a bit reminiscent of iOS 5. The skeuomorphic look suits the iPod Nano and currently it's running version 1.2, which functions perfectly fine. It includes a range of apps such as a music app, podcasts, fitness, clock, radio settings and more. A year after the Nano was released, Apple, after realizing how many people were using it as a watch, made it so there can be one large app on the home screen at a time instead of 4 small ones, which I find much easier to use, especially when it's being used as a watch. And a later update added 16 new watch faces, which is a somewhat uncommon example of Apple seeing what the community was doing with their product and improving on that experience. And how is that experience in the modern day? Well, if you ask me, it's pretty good. The iPod Nano, like the rest of the iPod line, can be synced up to iTunes and have any songs or MP3s downloaded to it, making for a fairly decent music player. It doesn't have Bluetooth, so if you would like to use wireless headphones you need to get a Bluetooth adapter, but luckily it has a headphone jack. This is something that can't be said for any Apple Watch or modern iPhone, so if you like sticking with the wire, the iPod Nano 6 and the rest of the iPod family work just fine. Although the Nano doesn't have any native Wi-Fi or Bluetooth connectivity, it does have an integrated radio when an external device like headphones are plugged in, so the iPod Nano can receive incoming FM radio signals. If you like listening to the radio, the iPod Nano 6 has that going for it. This may have an effect on the battery life, but I don't notice too much of a difference. Looking at it as a standalone device, the iPod Nano appears just as capable as it did 14 years ago, and really, it is, minus the battery. Since it was always intended as an offline device, lack of software updates don't make a difference on its functionality, and its ability to sync up to iTunes and or MP3 files downloaded work just fine with almost any Mac or Windows PC that has iTunes downloaded. The Nano still remains a great iPod, and a watch really, but what about everything that's come since? Since its release, the iWatch joined the lineup, and they beat out the Nano as a watch in practically every way. They have wireless capabilities, more storage, the ability to send messages, make calls, and much more. If you're in the market for a watch, the Nano 6 probably isn't for you. Its only real advantage is the headphone jack and the novelty of using it as a watch. But looking at its price, they still go for upwards of $70 to $80 Australian, and a new refurbished Apple Watch can be found for $200 to $300 Australian. So it's much more worth it to spend the extra on something with all the extra functionality, but what if you already have one and are looking for a use case for it? Well, if you really want, you can use it as a watch. It works quite well for the basic tasks you might want from it, and it can be a sort of test to see if you like the idea of a smartwatch. There isn't much of a downside except having to find and purchase a watch band, so if you're keen, it can be worth it. If you're sorted in the watch department, however, the Nano does have its uses as a regular iPod. It can be pretty neat MP3 player for your downloaded songs or podcasts. You could leave it in the car to use, take it for a walk, run, the gym, or any other use cases where you like listening to something and don't mind like a Bluetooth. Its small size and the clip on the bottom makes it easy to clip to your clothes, a pocket, or something, so it's not as inconvenient as one may think. But at the end of the day, the iPod Nano 6 was, and remains, a solid addition to the iPod line. It found new use cases for the iPod and may have even helped the Apple Watch come to life. Its use cases today are no more limited than they were 14 years ago, and although its days in the spotlight are long over, those still using them can keep enjoying them for many years to come, as an iPod or a watch. Anyways, thank you for watching. I'll try and stick to a monthly upload schedule, so hopefully I'll see you all again soon. No promises, bye.